All right, welcome everybody again to EAC. So happy to be here and that you all are too. I want to introduce yet another member of our R&D department here. And it's Mike Packard, and he told me that he used to collect other coppers, but for about 40 years now, he's been collecting and attributing Massachusetts half cents and cents. And he is now the presumptive authority. I hope that sounds okay. Presumptive authority. And he just published and released a book on the cents and half cents of Massachusetts. And he's going to talk about some of those things. Oops, I'm sorry. And don't let me advance his presentation. And then just one last note. Sometime after Mike became Mr. Massachusetts, he started doing, I guess it's a favor for us, but he used to take those old large cents and just deface them and then hand them out at EAC. So I appreciate all the bangers that we've got from you. Let me introduce Mike Packard to talk about the Massachusetts Mint.
We're here. There. That might help. Okay, we're here mostly because we really enjoy cents and half cents, federal cents and federal half cents. But about 5.5 years before the federal mint started striking cents and half cents, the Massachusetts mint started striking cents and half cents. And, one might ask, why in the world was Massachusetts striking cents and half cents? Well, the big reason is that Massachusetts and the other states started striking their own coins because the federal government did not open a mint to strike coins. And there were a lot of people at that time who thought it was very important to have a national mint. I mean, why in the world would any government want to strike coins? And one reason is that it announces to the rest of the world that we are a sovereign nation. We are here. We have made it. Look at us. And another, perhaps even more important reason is that the citizens of the various states look at the coinage, and what they see is not North Carolina or Massachusetts on the coins. They see United States of America. So it kind of brings the whole country together, people thinking of themselves as Americans. So I'll kind of start from there. When the Continental Congress, the Continental Congress formed 3 committees under the Lee Resolves. And the first committee was charged with basically developing or publishing the Declaration of Independence. The second committee was tasked with finding allies for us in our upcoming war with Great Britain. And the third committee was tasked with developing a document that kind of held all the states together. Excuse me for a second here, but in February of 1787, one of the subcommittees recommended to the Board of Treasury that they develop a mint and coinage, but that kind of fell on deaf ears. Nothing much happened. The third committee basically came up with the Articles of Confederation. It was roughly done about November of 1787, and by May of 1788, 10 of the 13 states had ratified it. It took all 13 states to ratify before it became effective. And then March of 1781, Maryland, the last state, ratified the articles. They were holding out because a number of states were claiming lands west of the original colonies, and they were not going to sign it until the states, especially Virginia, ceded the authority to the federal government. That's what they did. Okay, so Article 9 of the Articles of Confederation is basically gave the Congress assembled the sole and exclusive right for regulating the alloys and value of coins of the federal government or the various states. So this is kind of important. It says that the states could strike their own coins. And, the question about the federal government regulating the alloys and values kind of a little bit interesting, because they had not decided what the alloys and values of the various coins would be. But none of the states started right away striking their own coins. Basically, they didn't do this because there was constant discussions in the Congress about opening a mint there. In April of 1781, Alexander Hamilton kind of gave to Robert Morris a plan for a national bank, and there would be a mint attached to the national bank. Robert Morris came up with his own plan for a national bank, and the mint would be separate. And Robert Morris also tasked one of his assistants, Governor Morris, with developing a series of coins based essentially on the Spanish silver dollar. And that's where you came up with 1/1440th of a silver dollar was a unit, and such as that. In January of 1782, Robert Morris kind of presented that plan to the Congress, and in February, John Hanson, who was the first president of Congress assembled under the Articles of Confederation, signed a resolution to establish a mint and asked Robert Morris to come up with a plan. At that point, Robert Morris decided he was going to go more than the plan. He would have some coins struck and show Congress what he could do. And he hired Benjamin Dudley to cut the dies and develop the machinery for striking these coins. In April of 1783, he presented the examples of the coins to the Congress, and it was kind of poorly accepted. The states were having some arguments. They were still trying to pay off the national debt. They didn't want to spend the money for a national mint. And yet the states were still waiting for the federal government to establish a mint. In 1784, Thomas Jefferson came in and proposed a currency that was based on a decimal system and not on the old British pounds, shillings, and pence system. And so the states were still waiting. In June of 1785, a young fellow from Vermont went to the Vermont legislature and proposed striking coins for Vermont because there was a great need for coins. There was not enough specie to handle all the economic transactions, and what coppers there were often lightweight. And the Vermont legislature took about a week and came back and said, fine, we'll give you a contract for 2 years, strike coins at 160 grains, and we won't charge you any fee for you're given the permission to do this. And the next month, in July of 1785, Congress passed an act basically saying that the dollar would be the official monetary unit in the United States. There would be a copper 1/200th, and the other coins would progress in decimal fashion. But no discussion really about establishing a mint to do this. And then in October of 1785, Connecticut received a petition from some citizens to start a mint, and the Connecticut legislature took about a week, and they said, that's fine. We authorize you to strike 10,000 pounds in coins at the standard 144 grades, which was the British half-cent standard, and we're going to charge you 5% for your right to do this. and they went off and started striking Connecticut coppers. About 6 months after that, two citizens of Massachusetts submitted proposals. One of them was Seth Reed, who just said that basically, I want to strike coins for the state, and you tell me how to strike them and what restrictions you want to put on me. The other one was James Swan, who basically said, I want to strike 20,000 pounds of copper coins, and I will pay the Commonwealth of Massachusetts 5.5%. And, well, I might be getting a little, no, I'm not. There we go. Sorry. And so, like the other legislatures, Massachusetts gave it to a committee, and they went off and they decided, well, if these guys can strike coins and pay us 5% and still make a profit, that doesn't sound so good to us. Why don't we just strike the coins ourselves and keep the profit for the benefit of the Commonwealth? And so they had a committee do a kind of a back of the envelope test. And they, by their calculations, calculated that the Commonwealth could make about 50% profit from striking its own coins. And you look at this, and they say that they want to have about 165,000 pounds of copper to strike 20,000 pounds of these copper coins. And what they did is that the 1 pound of copper would make 2 shillings and 8 pence worth of coins. So that's basically 32 pence for this. And if you do some math, you find out that basically 20,000 pounds of coins of this size, which is about 110 grains each, was 9.6 million copper coins to be struck under their proposal. And they talk about the Mid-House, and they talk about the mill, and they talk about the equipment, and they're going to have 4 presses, and it's going to take 2 workmen per press, and they're going to have basically a midmaster and then an inspection team. Well, is there anything wrong with this? And they're going to have everything done in a year. So you stop and think, well, there's no die cutter. There's no allocation for people to work the smelter. Mm-hmm. No people to run the ingots of copper under the trip hammer, or to roll the copper, or to cut out the planchets. And you've got 2 guys on each press, and they're expected to do basically about 2.4 million coins in a year, 200,000 a month, on a 25-day schedule, about 8,000 coins a day. And that's kind of a heavy lift for people to get all of this done in 1 year. And so it was basically totally nonsensical, but this is what they came up with. And it kind of stopped there, because the Massachusetts legislative sessions, they had 2 or 3 sessions a year, and the session for the March ran out. So they basically tabled everything until they met again in May. And then in May, they had decided they really wanted to do this. And they were going to create an act to authorize a mint. And the governor had been in contact with some people, representatives at the U.S. Congress, and they said, don't do it. The federal government is getting ready to pass an act to open up a mint. You don't have to do this. In late May of 1786, 3 guys went to the New Jersey legislature, basically said, we like to open a mint. It'll benefit the people. We can get rid of all this lightweight copper. And the New Jersey legislature said basically, fine, we authorize you to strike 10,000 pounds of coin, 15 coppers, not half cents, 15 coppers per shilling, which comes out to about 3 million coins, and you will pay us 10%. And they got basically fined, and they went off and started striking New Jersey cents. And Massachusetts was still sitting here waiting for the Congress to act. Meanwhile, in Massachusetts, there's a little bit of a political to-do, because the legislature, basically, they were trying to raise taxes to get money to pay off Massachusetts' portion of the debt for the Revolutionary War. And one of the things they did was they basically said, you have to pay us in specie. You know, if you're a farmer, you can't bring in cows or pigs. You know, you have to give us the cash. That's what we want. And farmers were losing their farms because, you know, they didn't have the cash to pay the taxes. And it was starting to be a real bad situation. Basically, the people in the western part of the state didn't like this, and people refused to sit on juries, and kind of a little bit of insurrection in the air because of this. And some of the people in the Massachusetts legislature, very aware of this, were really pushing to get a Massachusetts mint so they can get some coppers out there into the countryside and help out. And what happened next on August 8th, and I'll go back. On August 8th, 1786, Congress basically specifies the alloys and the denominations and weights of the various monies, and they say basically 2.5 pounds of copper is what's going to take to strike $1's worth of copper, and that comes out to about 157.5 grains each, and that's fine. But they don't pass anything about a national mint. There's a standard now set, but there's nothing going on about a national mint. Well, Massachusetts waits until their next legislative session of the General Court, which is their legislative body, and they decide, well, we're going to pass an act, and they did. On October 17, 1787, and a couple of weeks later, they throw out a couple of 100 pounds of seed money to get things going. And then what happened? Nothing. Mm-hmm. There's absolutely no action to establish a mint. Now, I would have thought that, they've been, since March, they've been decided that they really would like to have a mint. You would have thought that they would have identified somebody who could run a mint, probably make sure that there was equipment available. But I'm not sure whether that happened or not. Well, why in the world did they not start their own mint and start striking coins? Well, as it turns out, on let's see, I'm a little bit there. Well, I may be a little bit out of order here, but as it turns out, they passed their act on October 17, 1786, to establish the Massachusetts Mint. On October 16, 1786, Congress passed an act to establish a federal mint. So it takes about a week for the information to get from Philadelphia up to Boston, and it seems pretty logical if you're told the national mint is been passed, we're going to start cranking out coins, and if the national mint is doing it, there's no need for Massachusetts itself to establish its own mint. So they basically pause their actions, and they wait. And they wait through November, through December. Shays' Rebellion happens. The farmers have finally had enough, and they're rebelling. They're going to go to Springfield Armory and try to get some weapons and whatnot. And the governor sends 4,000 troops from the Boston area to put down the rebellion. And they do. And February comes and there's no action, and March comes and there's no action either at the federal level or at the Massachusetts level. And then on April 21st, 1787, Congress basically cans the decision to establish a federal mint and authorizes they do a contract with James Joyce to strike federal coppers. Well, there's no mint coming on. And on May 2nd, which is about 10 days later, Massachusetts names Joshua Weatherly to be mint master for the Massachusetts Mint. So they decide that they are going to take action themselves again. Now, Joshua Weatherly was a coppersmith and founder in the city of Boston. And I would have thought that he would have rented a building or bought an existing building to establish the mint, but he didn't do that. He had other ideas, and so he built existing building. It's in Boston for the mint and the smelter, and he had a mint in Dedham for using the trip hammer and rolling the copper. And he contracted essentially with his good friend Richard Faxon to build the tools that were needed to run the mint, a press for cutting out the planchets and a press for stamping the coins. Now, where was the Massachusetts Mint? In 1787 and early on, Boston looked rather like this. It had basically the Cape Cod Bay to the right and the Back Bay or South Bay to the left. There's a lot of marshy land around that part of Boston. And right down where you see here, this whole area, this Boston Neck, but this little peninsula kind of coming up, is very narrow. It was subject to flooding in times of high tide or severe storm. On a normal day at high tide, there was only about 120 feet of land at the gates to Boston on either side. The road was sort of paved, but it was very rocky and bumpy, and most people would walk on the sides of the road. And the selectmen for years had refused to allow any building on the neck. They used it for hunting. They allowed cows to graze there and to be used for brick making, but no building. Well, they decided that they needed a seawall to protect that little strip of land going into Boston, and they didn't have money to build a seawall. Well, what are they going to do? Well, what they did was they, on the left, decided that they would basically give away about a quarter of a mile of the land immediately outside of the gate in 100-foot sections, and they would have prominent citizens of Boston. They would give the land to those prominent citizens of Boston on the understanding that they would build a seawall on the Cape Cod side, and on the other side they would build a plank fence about 200 feet from the road, and also do some other minor improvements to the road leading into Boston. And Joshua Weatherly was one of the 10 people who was given it. He got the 10th property, and the way they outlined it or allocated it is they had the lot lines basically parallel, except about 70 feet from Orange Street, which what it was then is now Washington Street. They took an angle so that the lot lines intersected Orange Street at a 90-degree angle. And I've overlaid basically this map of 10 lots on current map of Boston, and the property that Weatherly had from Boston essentially ran from Rollins Street to Waltham Street, but then it turned an angle and went back. This property was given away in October of '86, and Weatherly was one of the first people to build a house, and obviously, if it was ready to go by May or June of '86, well, they built houses a lot more quickly back in those days. So you could say fewer government regulations or whatever. But he had a house there, and he built the Mint House right behind his house, and about 200 feet to the east, he put in the smelter. So, but that's where the Mint was. Currently on that property is a Berkshire Bank, and on Washington Street, and the Mint was right behind it off of Rollins Street. Well, I said, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but he had the Mint buildings built on his property. He had a mill built in Denham, Massachusetts. They were obviously the mill took a little bit longer to complete, but he still, oh heavens, he had hired Joseph Callender as a die sinker. Richard Faxon had made the presses. He also had the die blanks given to Callender. His buildings for the Mint House was completed in August of 1787. The mill took a little bit longer for the building, but the interior of the mill took quite a bit longer. But they started striking coins in September 1787, and we know this because on September 29, 1787, they put $20 worth of cents on board the Columbia and the Lady Washington, which are two ships that sailed out of Boston Harbor, and really quite historic ships. There's a fellow named Joseph Barrell who is intrigued with Captain Cook's diaries and his stories about the rich wealth of furs in the Pacific Northwest, and he decided if he could send some ships over there, they could trade with the natives, get furs, then sail to China, trade the furs for Chinese goods, teas and porcelains and whatnot, and then come back to the United States and make a lot of money. And they actually did that. Columbia sailed down the Atlantic, around the Horn, and up the other side. And about 3 years later, it arrived back in Boston in August of 1790. It was re-outfitted and sent off again almost 3 years to the day later in September of 1790. And on its second voyage around, it discovered the Columbia River. And that's why the Columbia River is named Columbia River. It's named after the boat. And and on the same day that the money was put on board the Columbia and Lady Washington, Joseph Callender was paid $16. He was paid $4 for every die that he produced. And I'll tell you why that's kind of important a little bit later. And Joseph Callender had produced the first dies, and I'm not sure which were the first coins, but I strongly suspect that the transposed arrows was the first cent that was made, and that the 1D half cent of 1787 was the first half cent made. The transposed arrows not only had transposed arrows, but it also had a raised word cent on the chest, and I haven't seen enough transposed arrows coppers altogether, but I believe that the raised arrows were high enough that the center of the coin was a little bit higher than the edges, and so when you tried to stack them, they would rot and wouldn't be very sturdy. Whether or not the transposed arrows were originally intended to be transposed, I really don't think so, but the design of the coin was just an Indian on one side and an eagle on the other, and it could be that there was a real mistake, or Joseph Callender may have just decided himself to put the arrows in the right talent, and the wreath or the branch in the second in his left talent. But whatever happened, people decided that wasn't what they wanted. They wanted the arrows in the left talent where they really should be, and they wanted the branch in the right talent with the eagle looking right, basically signifying a peaceful intent. I think that the 1D half cent was the first because there's a white middle piece and three basically pie-fort pieces that are very early die states of that coin, and I think those were trial strikes. So that's why I think those were that. And they were put on the boat, and along with a quantity of medals, Columbia and Washington medals, and they were to be given out to dignitaries and ship's captains and whoever that they met on their voyage. The Lady Washington, I would step back a little bit, had 500 cents and 500 half cents, with 300 of these Columbia and Washington medals on board, and the other $12.50 of the copper coins were on the Columbia. And we don't know what the distribution of those was, but in my mind, I see 1,000 cents and 500 half cents as being kind of a logical distribution of those two. So about 25% of the value of the coins, in my estimation, is half cents, and the other 75 is large cents. So production gets started. Things are going. They're having some problems with the press, and it has every indication that the press was walking as they tried to swing the beam, because there's things they had iron hoops and all sorts of bolts and nuts that were being provided to try to stabilize the press.
See, but we take questions now, or
I prefer at the end, but if you want, okay.
wait.
Okay, this was the coins were supposed to be deposited with the treasurer of Massachusetts, and the first deposit was in November 1787, 150 pounds, which was $500, or $10 was 3 pounds at that particular time. Now you have to remember that they're expecting $70,000 worth of coins, and the legislature is probably thinking they're going to get $70,000 worth of coins in a year, and it's just not going to happen. On January 21st, they deposit another $700 worth with the treasurer, and Weatherly is called before basically a board, the governor's board, to answer some questions about why is this taking so long, and he goes through the usual process. It's a new enterprise. There's startup time. We're having some problems with the dies, whatever. But they say, okay, keep going. Periodically, Weatherly also has to report how much things are costing, and he keeps pretty extensive records of his expenses. And he submits those to the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth reimburses him for his expenses. So we go up to June 17th, and there's a fairly large deposit of about $1,300, and two sections. I believe that the $1,000 was in cents and the $300 was in half cents, but they did not specify what was in each group. But this is my thing. Now, Weatherly decided that he was paying too much to his die cutter. Joseph Callender was getting $4 per die, and basically as of the middle of March, they produced not much more than $1,200 worth of coins, and Weatherly had, I did not check this, but Callender had probably produced roughly 35 dies, and so that's $120 out of the $1,200 that have been minutes. He's getting about 10% of the coins that are being struck, and that struck Weatherly as being, well, that's an expense maybe we can cut back on. So he hired a young man from Newburyport who agreed to to cut the dies for 1% of the coins struck from those dies. And 1% versus 10%, that sounded a lot better to to Weatherly, so he fired Callender. Callender ended up making 39 dies he was paid for. Currently, we know coins using 36 of those 39 dies. So there's 3 dies that are unknown, and whether they were ever used, we don't know. Whether they're coins struck for them, the dies that are sitting out there waiting to be discovered, we don't know. But I knew when I started this, there were 34 Massachusetts cents that were known. And about 2000, 2005, there were 2 new varieties of Massachusetts cents that were discovered. So there may very well be more new varieties to be discovered. I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. These are the coins struck, some of the coins struck from dies cut by each of the die cutters. They look very, very similar, although there are slight differences. And Bill Ekberg has been looking at these dies, and he and I both have determined that these dies were struck from numerous small punches, and that when the Callender was relieved of his duties, those punches were transferred to Perkins, and that's one of the reasons that the coins look so similar between the 2 die cutters. I'll just hop back to, there we go. So the Legislative Council and the government continued to be concerned that there were not enough coins being produced. $70,000, and we're not seeing very much of that coming out. And they told Weatherly to report monthly on his expenses and his output. And he didn't always meet the deadlines that were set. And so in September of 1788, they wanted a full accounting of what had gone on. Well, he had given his last expense reports to the Commonwealth on end of August. Well, where are we going? Uh-oh. There we go. On at the end of August. And I guess down here September 9th were his reports of his total expenses. One of the things when he was looking for reimbursements, he never submitted reimbursements for Joseph Callender, the die sinker, or for a fellow named Jonathan Bixby, who ran a mill up in Newton, Lower Falls, in Massachusetts. I kind of skipped over a little bit. One of the reasons that, one of the problems that Weatherly had is he had a mint and, had a mill in Dedham, but the mill was not really operational. It didn't get the peen for the trip hammer until middle of January. They had apparently a number of problems. So he was shipping the coins from his smelter in Boston, the 8 miles down to Dedham, and he was having to send them another 8 miles up to Newton Lower Falls to have them drawn under the trip hammer. And he was doing this at least until April of 1788. So it's a lot of expense for building a new mint house and still having to pay somebody else to draw the copper. Okay, so we have, that's the expenses that Bixby was charged for drawing the copper. On his September 1788 expense report, if you compare it against what he had submitted to the Commonwealth to be reimbursed, well, there's a difference. The submitted expenses were 903 pounds larger than what he had basically submitted just a little over a week before. And what's going on? Well, part of it may be the expenses, the payments to Fixby and Calendar, because he didn't ask for reimbursement for those. He also had bought some more copper and had a couple of other expenses the first week of September. You add those in, and you're still well below what he says he's due, or what the expenses of the mint are. And I figure, well, what else could have been? Well, maybe he is including the expenses to the Commonwealth that he was not responsible for, things like his salary and salary for Ebenezer Hancock, who is the inspector of the mint. But even when you include those, and I couldn't think of any other expenses that he might have, there's still a difference of 110 pounds. And the question is, were there expenses that, there's no record of? Did he double count something along the way? Did he just have addition problems? Or was he padding the report of how much was owed? And I don't really know the answer to that. But what I do know, when I was playing around trying to figure things out, there's fixed expenses and there's variable expenses in any business. And if you look at basically at the variable expenses of just striking the coins, the wages for the workers, the cost of the copper, the cost of the fuel to do the smelter, the cost of the copper carting of the copper strips back and forth, it cost about, I estimate, about 83 cents to produce a dollar's worth of copper. Now, the fixed cost for the buildings, that would have to be amortized over time. The yearly expenses for the mint master and the inspector are not variable costs. I mean, they're fixed costs on a yearly basis, essentially. So those costs also have to be covered. So if whether he had been able to expand, put in more presses with more people, and probably 4 or 5 more presses, he would have been producing enough coins, theoretically, at that same marginal cost, that he could have been producing a profit. But he didn't do that. The Governor's Council were not happy to see that the expenses were so high relative to output. And they decided that they would ask the General Court to determine what ought to be done. Well, this is early September, and the General Court was out of session, and they didn't go into session again until the beginning of November. So they kind of sit on this for a couple of months, and Weatherly continues to produce some coins, and then he's called before the General Court to answer questions. And basically, the General Court says, we're very disappointed in what's been going on or what's not been going on, but basically, we're going to fire you. We want you to mint all the copper that's currently on hand that's suitable for minting, and then fire everybody. And we're going to find somebody else to take over your job. So he does that. The workers continue to work until January 15th, 1789. More coins are produced. We had the last delivery to the mint, a little under 1,000 pounds worth of coins. He puts in another report of his expenses, and he's paid. And then he does his final accounting. His final accounting is nonsense. I mean, at least in my perspective, it's nonsense. I mean, he doesn't really value any of the buildings or any of the equipment he has on hand. He's counting the copper that he was given at the beginning as an asset, which is, well, it's been used. The copper's gone. It's really an expense to the Commonwealth, even though he didn't pay for it. And he decides, well, the difference is 1,070 pounds. And that's what's owed me, is 1,070 pounds. Now he's produced 1,048 pounds of coins. He's had all these other expenses, and hey, I'm owed more money. And it takes about 6 months I guess, for the Massachusetts legislature or our Treasury office or whoever to determine, well, yeah, we're going to pay him this money. And not only did they pay him the money that he claimed for the 1,070 pounds, there was about 130 pounds worth of copper that the Commonwealth had given him at the very beginning of the mint to kind of start the process so he'd have some copper to strike. And they ended up paying him the 130 pounds for the copper that they'd already given him that he never paid for in the first place. So my calculations, well, hopefully are not too out of sorts, were that the a dollar's worth of copper actually cost the Commonwealth about $1.50 to produce before they paid this extra money to Weatherly. And after they paid the extra money to Weatherly, it basically cost about $2.60 to produce a pound's worth of copper. So I think he got away with something a little bit. Okay. Talk a little bit about total mintage. You got cents and half cents. The official mintage was just under $3,500, so about 5% of what was expected. And if they'd all been cents, there would have been 350,000. If they'd all been half cents, would have been 700,000. The number somewhere in between. The little information I have on how many cents and half cents, the ratio, was the amount on the ship. I assume about 25% of the value was half cents. And that would be about 40% of the coins produced would be half cents. And then on the $1,300 submissions to the Treasury, it comes out about 23% were half cents, and about 37% of the coinage was half cents. So I kind of use those to estimate, and I estimate between 400 and 430,000 coins were produced at the Massachusetts Mint, based on the official about $3,500 delivered. Now, could it have been more? Well, he paid Callender and Bixby basically directly, and I think he was just paying them in the coppers, and that's why he never submitted an expense report to the Commonwealth to be reimbursed. But were those coppers that he paid them counted as part of the what he gave the Treasury, or were they not? Was the $20 that he put on the Columbia and Lady Washington counted? Were they, or were they not? Well, if they were not counted as part of what was given to the Treasury, the mintage increases up to probably 445 to 475,000 coins. And now, what happened when the mint shut down? You know, the mint shuts down. Weatherly asked that he be given permission to use the equipment that was in the mint. And he's given permission to use the equipment that's in the mint. And what equipment do we have? We have a cutting press for planchets. We have a stamping press for coins. We have a rolling mill with a trip hammer for drawing the copper. Did he make more sense afterwards or not? I don't know. I would not have suspected at first that he did, but you know, I have cause to wonder. So the mintage could have been even higher than what I have here. So let's see. All right. So briefly, why did the mint lose so much money? They had new buildings built. So there's a lot of upfront costs. If he'd rented, he wouldn't have had that much expenses over the course of the basically year and a half that the mint was in operation. His plating mill was 8 miles away, so you had the cost of carting the copper 8 miles each way to be drawn, except it wasn't really drawn in Dedham 8 miles away. It was drawn in Newton, which is another 8 miles away. So you have even more expenses, and you have to pay the bill to draw the copper. So you have the additional expenses there that you're paying somebody else to do what you expected to do yourself. Uh, and that was because it took so long to get the mill in operation. He had only one striking press. If there was a problem with the striking press, well, production stopped. If he'd had 4 striking presses, production would have continued on the ones that were still operational while the one that was broken was fixed. And then, of course, when the mint closed, Weatherly claimed he was owed a lot of money, which was paid, and that was basically the biggest part of the loss to the Commonwealth. And let's see. And finally, I would say that, in my opinion, Massachusetts coppers are the best. They were the last Confederation era mint to open, and probably had the lowest mintage. So if you're a collector, low mint is good, right? They were the first coins to say cent and half cent. So it's a historic denomination. What I didn't put up here is that the designs on the coin are pretty iconic American. You've got an American Indian on the obverse and an eagle on the reverse. Some people have asked me why Massachusetts was the only coin to have cent and half cent. And of course it is because on the August 8, 1786 legislation set the standards for cent and half cent that wasn't really known before. So the other states had contracted with their minters to produce coins before that standard went into effect. And Massachusetts decided to follow the federal standards and become So basically it was an issue of timing. Massachusetts was late, but they benefited from being late. And I will just say that I think Massachusetts coppers are the best made coppers. They're most consistent in design, which from a collector's point of view may not be all that good because you like to see differences. The horses of New Jersey are not all the same looking, but the Massachusetts coppers, Indians and Eagles, are pretty much the same looking. People tell me it was very hard to tell them apart, so I've written a book, and I think it has very good attribution plates in it for being able to determine which variety of cent or half cent you have. They had the best quality planchets. There were some minor problems with it, but I've never seen a brockage. I've only seen one double strike. The most common error are clip planchets. There are some that have striations in them, but mostly in 1788. The weights are more consistent than the coins of the other states. Basically, they have the fewest errors. And, it's the perfect coin. What's not to like? So I guess if there's questions, I'll entertain them. It's looking. Franklin.
Yeah. What do we know about the planchets and why the quality of the planchets are better than New Jersey or Connecticut?
I think, personally, that they had good quality copper. I think that they did their smelting standards were fairly high. I think that if there were problems with planchets, they threw them back into the smelter and didn't just use them because they had them. And, that's, I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I strongly suspect. Bill?
Mike mentioned that he thought the transposed arrows was the first centralized one. I did a study of the dies, and I found that was the first die.
Right.
So that supports
Yeah.
Mike said.
That's good. I will say that a couple of things about the book, kind of a naked commercial appeal here, is I did write a book. It's $120. I want to thank Bill because he did a fantastic job with the layout and the cover design. All the errors in the book, and there are some, and more will be found, are on me. And I also want to say that for those of you who already have a copy of the book, there's an error in one of the diagnostic plate coins that's shown, and I have made some stickers that are available if you've already purchased the book, or when you do purchase the book, that you can lay over the error piece and have at least that error corrected. Yes.
And my one comment and two questions.
Okay.
Right. Could you imagine if Mike and Kat lived in Boston in the 1780s and he was the state auditor? Whether we wouldn't stand a chance. For the accounting there, he wants to make a fabulous job. Like, obviously, whether we can know about double people.
Yeah.
You just like, so that's my comment. But my question is the Washington Columbia Medal, is that yours?
No, that came off of one of the sites. The pictures in the book are mostly from Heritage or Stax Bowers, who generously allowed me to use pictures from their archives.
For Bryson or something. Yeah, that
medal?
Yeah.
I don't know. But you know, if you look on their website, you'll find out. That's the nicest one I saw. So, but
and the last question: when you wrote your book, how long did it take you to accumulate all the information? How many years did you really spend collecting information?
When?
If I have on that question, swinging into it, what? How long it took you to write, and where did you get the bulk of your information? Do you have to travel to some library?
Well, yes. Okay. Doing the last one first. Okay. Where did I go? Well, I utilized what information was available in Crosby. I really like Crosby as far as talking about the Massachusetts or the legislative process in Massachusetts for before the act establishing the mint was made, and he had a lot of useful information on activities at the mint. I went up to the Massachusetts Archives and spent a fair amount of time at the Massachusetts Archives taking pictures of some of their books. I copied all of the expense reports that they had for the calendar, that Weatherly made, and a number of the other documents from the Commonwealth going back to Weatherly. I think I have everything. And when I was doing my analysis,
Getting access to.
no, you just walk in and you fill out some forms. They don't want you taking any pencils or pens. Oh, well, you can take in a pencil, but not pen. And basically, I took in a camera. Everything is on microfiche, which is not necessarily all that good. It's been well used and a little bit scratchy, but I took pictures of everything and that. So anyway, and that was over a period of time. C4 used to have their convention in Boston. So I tried to take off a few extra days and visit that place and some of the historical societies of the towns around the area in Denham, Massachusetts, and Quincy, Massachusetts, and whatnot, and just kind of amassed a lot of information. When I finished the book, I was putting away a lot of notes, and it was, that's interesting. I should have put that in my book. That's interesting too. Why didn't I put that in my book? I was going to, but toward the end, I was just trying to get the book out, and I was probably a little more rushed than I should have been. But we've got 8 publications, and I bet it could have been better. I don't think there's going to be a second edition, so somebody else can come along with their improvements. But
You're obviously avoiding my question about how to get open.
Well,
One.
I started. joined the EAC back in 81 and was the regional secretary and then the regional chairman. And I decided I was just having a good time, and I really ought to do something that added to the knowledge base. And I was looking around and found I was collecting federal half cents, and I decided that looking around, there'd been nothing really done on Massachusetts since writers in 1920, except for what you could find in auction catalogs. And then I got a copy of Ryder's publication and found out that he basically just cribbed from what Crosby had done. And I got really annoyed at later because it was his numbers, but all of Crosby's work for doing this stuff. But that was about 1986. And I did some surveys with people. And anyway, about 1990 or so, people said, you know how to tell these things apart. You need to write a book. And all we're really interested in is the attribution guide. All that other stuff can come later. And my attitude was, no, it can't all come later. I'm curious. I want to find out what's going on. Who were the people at the Mint that worked at the Mint? How long did things take? Where did they get the copper? Da 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 da. And I was never able to get all that information. Then I decided that Crosby was kind of I didn't like the way he numbered his varieties. The first variety ought to be 1A, not 1D. So I decided I really needed to renumber everything. And I needed to figure out the emission sequence in order to number things properly. But then I couldn't really figure out the emission sequence to my satisfaction. I could say this was done before that, but
Launch Wells always called emission sequence the black hole of the.
Well, and he's probably right.
Come back out alive.
And then I wrote my book, Renumbering Everything. And people, don't renumber everything. It's too confusing. Everybody knows writer numbers. They don't need something different. So I went back to using the writer numbers. But one of my pet peeves was that they had Perkins dies for 1788, Perkins varieties, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 11. And he was the second die cutter. And all of his coins were struck after Callender's coins. So in my book, I do the Callender varieties first for 1788 cents and the Perkins later, which is going to confuse a lot of people. But I like to have things together where I think they belong. Yes, sir.
Well, allow me one more final because did you hear what you said? 881, I believe.
No, that's when I joined EAC. I started looking. Yes, I can. Corrections. Okay, I started looking this about 86.
Well, got it.
1986 is when I started. Yeah.
Okay, so they called it that. 86. That's 40 years ago. Yes. And I got to tell you the true story is that I was up at the AS back in October, and a group of his book was released. It just came out, and the huddle, the guys were saying, we've been offering up sacrifices and prayers for years that Mike would not die. His walk. It's 40 years in the making, and it went meeting. Holy smoke! That Evans early.
Thank you. That's costly. So, anyway, the book is $120, available on the board soon.
And cut that you're promising me.
And also available for Charlie Davis and David Fanning. And the other thing I like to say is the number of people ask for bangers. And if you ask for a banger and haven't picked it up, come by the table and pick it up. I take too many home every year. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, but
yes.
Can we handle the work?
Oh, I sign them if asked. Yeah, I'll do that. Yes. All right, I guess that's that.
I think they